Picture a street in a sprawling city, completely cloaked in those deep, heavy shadows of early morning. It's quiet, almost entirely empty. Now I want you to imagine yourself actually standing on that street. You look down at your hands, you check your pockets, you look up at the street signs, and in this rising tide of pure, unadulterated panic, you realize you have absolutely no idea where you are. You don't know how you got there, and terrifyingly, you don't even know your own name. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unraveling a story that feels like a psychological thriller, but it is entirely 100% real. We're looking at the terrifying reality of a human mind actively, deliberately deleting a man's life.
So on the morning of August 28, 2006, this visceral nightmare became reality for a 40-year-old guy found wandering the streets of Denver, Colorado. He walked into a hospital desperate for help. No wallet, no phone. Medical tests confirmed he wasn't drunk, and there were literally zero drugs in his system. He hadn't even suffered a traumatic blow to the head. He was, physically speaking, perfectly healthy. But the terrifying truth? He had absolutely no idea who he was. And the absolute wildest, most disturbing part of this entire mystery, his brain had done this to him on purpose.
Section 1. The Man with No Name. Okay, let's dive into this. Before the erasure, Jeff Ingram was just an ordinary, hardworking construction worker from Olympia, Washington. He had a fiancée named Penny. He left on what was supposed to be a super short, routine trip to Alberta, Canada to visit a buddy. But he never arrived. For 4 agonizing weeks, he vanished completely without a trace. No one knew where he was, or honestly, if he was even alive.
Fast forward 4 weeks later, hundreds of miles away in Denver, a local news segment aired a story about an unidentified man who had walked into a hospital, unable to name himself. Back in Washington, Penny was watching television that night. The face flashed on the screen, and her heart just stopped. It was Jeff. She immediately jumped on a flight to Denver, absolutely desperate to bring the man she loved back home. But when she actually walked into the room, reality just crashed down on her. When Jeff looked at her, there was zero recognition, no warmth, just a stranger's polite confusion at a crying woman he had never seen before in his life.
Section 2. The stranger he loved. Really think about the psychological weight of that moment. Jeff is looking at the woman he's supposed to marry, and he's feeling absolutely nothing. To him, Penny is a complete stranger making these incredible claims about a life he has no memory of living. I mean, he literally had to sit down and study photographs and journals of his own past. He's scrutinizing his own handwriting, examining the smiles and holiday photos, looking at his own face like a detective examining cold evidence about someone else's life.
That process of returning home to Olympia was haunting. Jeff practically had to rebuild a ghost. He relied entirely on external evidence to prove to himself who he was. He had to consciously, deliberately choose to believe Penny. He described sitting at his own dinner table, surrounded by family and friends who loved him deeply, yet feeling like a house guest who had somehow overstayed his welcome. He was an imposter in his own skin. Slowly, painfully, over months of doctors helping him piece together fragments, his identity began to return. Jeff Ingram came back.
Part 3. The mind's emergency shutdown. Now, to truly understand what happened to Jeff, we have to look deeper. We've got to look at the dark, fascinating neuroscience behind this disappearance. Because Jeff's brain didn't just break. It didn't malfunction randomly. No, it executed a highly specific, deliberate command.
So the crucial point is understanding exactly what this condition actually is. Jeff was experiencing something called dissociative fugue. Listen, this isn't that amnesia you see in movies caused by a physical head injury. Not at all. Fugue is triggered by overwhelming psychological stress. When the brain is carrying an emotional or psychological load that it simply cannot process anymore, it essentially performs an emergency shutdown. And the very first thing it unplugs, the very first thing it erases to save the system, is the self. It literally removes the identity to eliminate the pain. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer, terrifying power of the mind's survival instinct. Walk through this mechanism with me. Step 1, the psychological stress breaches a critical threshold. The pressure becomes fatal to the mind's stability. Step 2, the brain initiates an extreme self-protection protocol. And it doesn't just suppress a single bad memory. Step 3, total deletion. The identity, the personal history, the attachments, all wiped. Let that heavy reality land for a second. Your brain right now possesses the capability to purposely destroy your entire life's narrative just to protect you from feeling it. Part 4, an erasure on loop. Now, eventually, Jeff got his memory back. He settled back into his life with Penny. The nightmare seemed to be over. The system had rebooted. But here is where this story takes a massive, devastating turn. Just when it seems his identity is safely anchored, the unthinkable happens. It happened again. Follow this timeline. August 2006, he vanishes and is found in Denver. But then, in 2007, Jeff vanishes once more. He wakes up in a hospital in Seattle, Washington, with absolutely no memory of who he was. The same man, the exact same erasure, just a totally different city. And then, unimaginably, it happened a third time. Each time he vanished, each time Penny had to track him down, each time she had to agonizingly reintroduce herself to the man she loved, and each time he had to look at this crying stranger and deliberately choose to fall in love with her all over again.
So why was his brain doing this? Psychiatrists realized a horrifying truth about Jeff's condition. The underlying stress threshold was never fully resolved. His brain had learned a highly effective but incredibly destructive pattern. Whenever psychological pressure exceeded a certain limit, total erasure was its default answer. This is what psychiatrists call a maladaptive coping loop. You see, the brain doesn't know it's destroying a marriage. It has no idea it's destroying a life. It only knows it is successfully eliminating pain.
Section 5. The illusion of identity. This brings us to, honestly, the most unsettling part of this entire explainer. I want you to think about yourself for a moment. We spend enormous, exhausting amounts of energy constructing who we are, right? Our names, our personal histories, our roles in society, husband, friend, worker, survivor. We treat our identity as something completely solid, a bedrock foundation. But Jeff's condition forces us to confront a very, very fragile reality. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast here. On one hand, his names, his memories, his history, his deep relationships, all completely erased, gone in an instant. But on the other hand, what remained wasn't just an empty shell. He retained his skills. He retained his ability to use language. His core personality remained totally intact. He was still reportedly warm, curious, and funny. He just didn't know his own name. This proves something profound. Your identity isn't a single physical structure in your brain. It's not a hard drive you can just point to. As neuroscientists now understand it, identity is simply a story your brain tells itself. It is a predictive construct. It's a model your mind maintains every second of every day just to make sense of the world around you. Identity is an active, ongoing narration. And like all narrations, like any story being told, if it becomes too painful to tell, the narrator can just stop speaking. The brain can brutally interrupt the story and simply refuse to turn the page.
So what does life actually look like when you know your narrator might walk off the job at literally any moment? Well, Jeff and Penny eventually did marry. Today, Penny acts as his permanent anchor. She is the physical hard drive of his identity when his own mind refuses to be. He wears a medical alert bracelet. He carries extensive identity documentation on him at all times. He practically and methodically prepares every single day for the very real possibility that his mind will go completely blank again.
In one of his last reported interviews, Jeff said something that carries immense echoing weight. He said, "I don't take for granted that I'll wake up knowing who I am." Let that sit with you. Most of us will never, ever experience the extreme erasure that Jeff did. But every ordinary morning, when you open your eyes and you know your name and you know who you love and you know exactly where you belong, that isn't just a given. It is a quietly extraordinary feat of the human mind holding your story together. Jeff's story shows us that we are just not as solid as we think we are. Our foundation is just a fragile, beautiful story maintained by a brain desperately trying to keep us safe. Which leaves us with this final thought. If your mind executed that emergency shutdown tonight, if you woke up tomorrow morning with no memory of your name, your past, or anyone who loves you, what is the one thing you'd want someone to tell you about yourself?